Told you I thought we'd get a bounce, a bottom this week, some type of bottom, and a bounce surrounding the Thanksgiving Day holiday week. MACD is trying to turn back up here, so we'll see if we get it. We got a bottoming tail in the daily time frame on Friday. We'll see if we can get more signals turning bullish and if we can get a recovery. But we're about to confirm a bear market this week. Not only is Bitcoin breaking the trend line from the 2022 low, but you had a close below the 50-week moving average. Here, as I talked about, getting a 50-50 sell signal. That means that Bitcoin has closed below the 50-week moving average and the RSI is below the 50 level in a 50-50, what I call a 50-50 sell signal. Add that back over here again. You closed here. First you closed below the 50-week. It wasn't confirmed. Then you closed below it again, and this time it was confirmed. You're bouncing around it. You got an open and a close after the close below the 50-week moving average, and that confirmed the bear market, and that's what we have right now. After you confirmed the bear market, you got a bounce, and then you still went lower before you got a big rally back up to the 50-week moving average. You moved further away from the 50-week. I think you'll do that, and eventually I think you're going to backtest the trend line that we're breaking here. But Bitcoin this week on Sunday is about to confirm a bear market. You got the moon boys and the experts that were blindsided. I told you this trend line was likely pointing to the top here, and that's why I called it top on October 6th with this divergence and other signals I talked to you about at the time and the 4-year cycle. Bitcoin confirming a bear market is telling us we're likely going to lower levels like we did over here. When it confirmed the bear market, you still, you try to bounce, but eventually you still moved to lower levels. I think we do that until late December or more likely on into January before the Fed meeting at some point in January. I think Bitcoin's going to get a massive rally back up towards the 90, mid 90,000, 90,000, maybe high 90,000 area or above 100,000 depending on how low it goes. But again, I think that you've got this head and shoulders forming like the head and shoulders that I think formed over here, but it had a slanted neckline. And again, moving back to the 50-week, I think you're going to see something very similar to that. Bitcoin will confirm by tomorrow a bear market. People are still oblivious to what's going on. I'm telling you, the moon boys in the herd, most of them are going to ride this thing all the way back down like they did back over here in the last bear market. Here we bounced just above the 50. Here we bounced just under it. Here we're taking it out and we're confirming a bear market. We did not confirm a bear market at these other pullbacks. We are confirming a bear market this week by Sunday's close if you have an open and a close below the 50-week moving average after last week's close below it. Keep asking me about Ethereum. And the only hope I see for Ethereum is if you try to get a divergence here in the weekly time frame with the RSI and the MACD. The problem with that is that Bitcoin and Ethereum diverged at the top here. That Ethereum made a lower high in October while Bitcoin made a higher high. And oftentimes these divergences are associated with turning points. You still may get a larger divergence here, but the chances, if Bitcoin confirms the bear market this week, are becoming less and less likely. Ethereum is going to try to do what Bitcoin's doing, and that's retrace this entire move. Only hope, I think, for the Ethereum bulls is if you get a divergence here in the week. There was no divergence on the RSI in the weekly time frame. Bitcoin had it in the weekly time frame. Ethereum did not. Bitcoin had a divergence in the weekly time frame on several indicators. We don't have that. We don't have that for Ethereum. So that is hope for bounce. The risk is that Ethereum plays catch up to Bitcoin, retracing all of this. When the bear market happened in 2021, Ethereum got a lower high as Bitcoin got a lower high. I think the only hope really was for Ethereum going to new highs was possibly that leading diagonal scenario I talked about with Bitcoin. I think it's pretty much off the table. You don't have a divergence here. You had it with Bitcoin. you have this larger divergence, but again, you don't have one in the recent price action as Bitcoin did get. That, I think, is the only hope for altcoins and Ethereum. I think Bitcoin's top. You do have a divergence between Bitcoin and Ethereum, even though you don't have a divergence here. Ethereum made a lower high in October and Bitcoin made a higher high. So again, that is problematic for the bullish case going forward for Ethereum. See it on the daily chart. Here in October, Bitcoin peaked October 6th. Ethereum was making a lower high. It had already peaked in the summer here in August. And it diverged. And you see the divergence up here that led to the sell-off that we currently have right now. Bitcoin and Ethereum often diverge at tops and bottoms. Before this Ethereum sell-off, Ethereum made a lower high in January of 2025. Bitcoin made a higher high. They diverged. Oftentimes, there are divergences between Bitcoin and Ethereum at tops and bottoms. This is the problem for the bullish case going forward. We don't have a divergence in the most recent time frame, or in the most recent price action in the weekly time frame on Ethereum. RSI or the MACD or the price oscillator still have a divergence here in the daily time frame. Is problematic for a bullish case going forward for Ethereum. You're about to get a death cross. The 50 is just coming down towards the 200. Ethereum could play catch up. You'll try to retrace much of this move as Bitcoin has already retraced the majority of it so far. Now, Bitcoin is now getting the close last week below the 50-week moving average. It's going to get an open and close below the 50-week moving average in all likelihood before this week ends, and that will confirm the bear market. Ethereum has been much more choppy after the bear market. It has dropped. It has dropped below the 50-week moving average. It got an open and close below the 50-week moving average. It's had a lot more volatility than what we've seen with Bitcoin. The 2025 sell-off with Bitcoin, that didn't take out the 2024 lows. They diverged at that low where Bitcoin made a higher low at the April 2025 low, higher than the 2024 low, whereas Ethereum diverged. It moved beyond the 2024 low and it moved to a new low, but they bottomed out in April, but they often diverge at tops and bottoms. You have a little divergence right here that we just witnessed at the October peak. So again, that's a huge red flag for a Bitcoin top, potentially an Ethereum top. Bitcoin has held above the 50. We've had more choppiness moving to new lows. And again, it is these divergences, often called turning points with Bitcoin, the divergences between Ethereum and Bitcoin, which is what we have right now in the daily time frame. And you can see it here with the weekly. There may be no divergence on some of the indicators in the more recent price action. You do have a divergence with Bitcoin, which is problematic. So again, the only hope I think for the Ethereum bulls in an altcoin season was likely the leading diagonal scenario. If that were to play out with Bitcoin, I think that's off the table now. So again, the risk is now that we have a top on Ethereum as well, and it plays catch up, getting a much bigger retracement with Bitcoin that has retraced most of the run up from the April low. Ethereum got a close below the 50-week, now trying to get a close below. But as I've said, we've had more choppiness in run up off of the 2022 low, and you just went back up to the 2021 highs. Bitcoin exceeded those levels, and Bitcoin almost doubled from its previous peak in 2021 at 69,000. It nearly doubled. Ethereum did not. It formed this potential double top with the previous peak. So that's the problem, is that Bitcoin and Ethereum have diverged. The only hope for a rally to a new high would be a divergence in the weekly time frame, which is starting to become less and less likely. Because Bitcoin is in crash wave 3, meaning we're probably not going to get a bigger rally until late December or January for Bitcoin. Ethereum could be a whole lot lower by then. Those telling us that Bitcoin's going to go to new highs. All these so-called experts are moving their targets. I told you they were going to do that. They're moving their targets for Bitcoin. 200,000, 250,000, and all these other unrealistic targets are moving them into the future, as I predicted would happen. But the weekly charts are telling us it's not going to happen. The weekly charts are telling us Bitcoin's topped and it's moving into, it's already started a bear market. People are late to the party. Bitcoin's already dropped 36%. I'm telling you, they're going to ride it all the way down. They always do. Experts are going to be calling a bottom all the way down, as they always do. But just quickly, these weekly charts, again, they remain on sell. The awesome oscillator is moving into the negative territory in the weekly time frame this week. I did that back over here. It was confirming the bear market. Eventually, you got to bounce. You got to bounce. Let me just mark that here for you. Again, we still went to new lows after that. Now that was the following week that we bottomed here. We don't have to bottom the very next week. Again, you're likely going to do what you did in the past and drop, 50% or so with Bitcoin. But the awesome oscillator remained in negative territory until it formed a bullish divergence, until we bottomed and the reversal happened back over here. And we dropped 78.5%. Okay? But eventually you drop 52%, you got a rebound of 46%, you got around a 50% retracement of the decline, and then the bottom fell out of Bitcoin. Now, in the bull phase, we had corrective moves, and we always reverted back to bullish. In the counter trends, you reverted back to bullish in the bear market. You see that in the future. We bottom out in late December or January. But this is telling you, hey, we're going into negative territory. You're likely moving into a bear market. The weekly chart, if we close below the 50-week moving average this week, it will confirm a bear market. But all my weekly and monthly charts are all warning Bitcoin's likely started the bear market and that Bitcoin is topped with the 4-year cycle ending. My weekly signals, monthly signals, they warned at much higher levels that we were either going to get a major correction or a bear market. And I told you why at the top, why I thought Bitcoin had peaked and we're starting a bear market. We get the confirmation of a bear market this week. The other scenario I talked about, I told you if I'm wrong, we're going to go and clear resistance and we'll see all my signals turn back to bullish in the weekly time frame. Narrative, if we confirm the bear market this week with an open and a close below the 50-week moving average this week, the bear market is going to be confirmed. There's no reason to talk about the bullish scenario anymore because it's off the table. Again, my signals did an outstanding job of calling the bear market, calling the corrections. Again, here, setting up that large head and shoulders, or maybe with a slanted neckline, much like what we had back over here, as I've talked about at great length in detail. And I have people, when I call the top, 7 weeks, I've been telling you, Bitcoin has likely topped. I told you, I believe that it has topped. I believe the 4-year cycle has ended. I believe the divergences in the weekly and the monthly time frame. Leave my signals. I have people that want me to be bullish because they're a bunch of perma bulls. Want me to ignore my signals. I ain't going to do it. Again, my signals are warning Bitcoin has likely topped. Oh, and while I'm thinking about it, I just want to show you this chart right here. Again, the cloud was correct in turning bearish. It's been consistently bearish. The counter trend, we went slightly above it. It reverted right back to bearish. You're probably not going to get a bottom until you see a divergence develop here in all likelihood. This is the intraday chart for Bitcoin. So again, it's suggesting we'll probably get some kind of bounce like the awesome oscillator suggesting in the daily time frame and the RSI, but then you're probably going to see a divergence develop. The RSI moving to new lows on the 4-hour chart of Bitcoin, negating the previous bullish divergence, that's likely going to be the case. When Bitcoin breaks 98,000, look out below. Warning about a 40 to 50% crash. We're hitting the 78.6 Fibonacci of this entire advance right now. We've moved just beyond it. Again, I warned we are coming down to 74,000. I was laughed at, mocked. We're nearly there. Again, they're still red. The last signal we got right here for a short-term bottom, again, just a counter trend. We've moved to that 78.6 Fibonacci, so you got a shot at a bounce there. Just moved beyond it. And again, my weekly charts, again, all bearish. My monthly charts, all bearish. Got the warning sign of a top, back at the top. We did back over here at these tops. We did back at the bottom. Now we've taken out the 50-week and we're getting an open and close below it. Get an open and close below the 50-week moving average this week, which we're likely going to do tomorrow with the close on Sunday. You closed below it last week. You dropped 10%. Now you're down over 10%. And even if you get a rebound, you're getting an open and a close below that, confirming your market. Back over here, when we hit the 50-week moving average, we bounced around it for a while. You closed below it here. You got an open and close below it here, and it confirmed their bear market. This is likely what we're seeing right here. And again, you'll get some kind of bounce, and your price still move to new lows, and then you'll get the bigger recovery back to the 50-week moving average after we move further away from the 50-week and the 200-day moving average in the daily time frame. Now, we got more of a triple top in the daily time frame, more recent price action, but here, if we go back to the December and January top, you've got this more of this double top type of pattern here, very similar to what we had with the two peaks in 2021 and the first one in 2021, the second one in 2021. And again, just more weekly charts. So you've got the rainbow cloud, and I create my own indicators. My rainbow cloud turning bearish. You've got my critical mass trend timer turning red. It's flat. It's flat right now. Eventually, it's going to start dropping, as we did over here with the bear market. It turned bearish, and eventually, again, bars turned red. The critical mass turned bearish. We sold off with the 50% drop. Balance of power turned negative, and then the balance of power remained negative all the way down until Bitcoin bottomed. Okay, and again, it did it with these pullbacks in the bull phase. So this is telling us either you have part of a bear market, which again we're likely to confirm with an open and close below the 50-week moving average by Sunday, or you have a major correction, which I talked about at higher levels, which I think is much less likely, because I see real evidence of a bear market in the monthly time frame. But signals remain bearish in the weekly time frame and in the monthly time frame. You know, since I called the top, I told you about all this back at the top. We started the sell-off in the early weeks of the sell-off, warned you, Bitcoin is likely topped. Now, if you find this information useful, please support the channel. Follow the link below to take you to a secure site. You can donate any amount you want. Rather than getting sponsors, I just ask that you partner with me and support the channel. Those channels have sponsors and they sell you a bunch of stuff. I want to send you to exchanges. You know, I don't want to send anybody. How do I know an exchange isn't going to end up going belly up, or an exchange is not on the up and up? You're smart enough to figure all that out for yourself. Just ask that you support the channel. So follow the link below. It'll take you to a secured site. You can donate any amount you want. If you do that, I thank you. But the balance of power going negative. The signals are bearish. They've been bearish. Most of my signals turned bearish right after the top. Bars turned red right after the peak. Rainbow cloud turned bearish a few weeks later. Signals turned immediately. Other warning signs immediately. We're now getting, after the sharp decline, the confirmation signals like we had last week with the balance of power going negative. It's a Saturday session. It's a Saturday session for Bitcoin. Got a few more hours before the close, but I just want to market, and I'll talk about that briefly in this video here. Again, the experts, the moon boys, the herd, everybody that told us this sell-off of now 36% wasn't going to happen. And I called the day of the top at major resistance, and I told you if I was wrong about that top, we'd pull back and clear resistance, but I told you I thought there was a very good chance the 4-year cycle was ending. I told you, again, I have the guts to tell you what I think, and I told you I thought we had topped. I based that on several things. I called a top on the day of the top, and I've talked about the bullish scenario still going forward, even though I don't agree that that will be the case. Once we confirm a bear market, that scenario is being taken off the table. Once you confirm a bear market, which is what we're likely going to do by Sunday's close. Bitcoin's down 0.46% right now. Bitcoin is at the low 84,700 area. The mid 700 area, 84,761 at the moment. Bitcoin likely going to get a bounce. It probably try to bounce this week, and that's probably what we're seeing with the bottoming tail. I told you I thought it could be as early as Monday and Tuesday. I was wrong about that. Again, short-term price fluctuations harder to call rather than the main movement. The main movement is now down. We are in a downtrend. We headed back to 74,000 over here, and eventually I think you're going to take it out. Great Scott! Did you hear what I just said? We're going to probably take out 74,000. That's a 41% drop. And again, I've been predicting, as I believe we topped, which I told you back at the top, I believe that we're going to drop 40 to 50%, likely more than 40%, 41% over here to kick off the bear market. That's what Bitcoin's done in the past. Why is that so unreasonable for people to believe that Bitcoin's going to drop 40 or 50% to kick off a bear market? That's what it's done in every single bear market. Lowest drop to kick off the bear market was 45%. So I'm going 40, 50%. Average has been about 52, 53% or so. Last bear market was 52%. How is this so unreasonable? I believe that Bitcoin's going to do what it's done in the past. How is it so unbelievable that Bitcoin completed the 4-year cycle when that's what it's done in the past? People are amazing. No, it's a 5-year cycle. Bitcoin didn't reach the levels I wanted, so I'm going to make things up and say that the 4-year cycle's broken and we're now in the 5-year cycle. Poppycock. We've just dropped 36%. So I called the top and predicted this crash. And I warned you over and over, we're kicking off the bear market. And in the bear market, we're going to drop 40 to 50%. People bury their heads in the sand and it doesn't, they're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. It doesn't fit my narrative, so I'm going to discredit this sell-off. The people that told us it was never going to happen are discrediting the sell-off. Again, the people that, when I told you, they told us we had a breakout. I told you had a fake out. I told you we were going to sell off. They told you that's not going to happen. And then they called a bottom. Oh, it's a bottom, the liquidation move. I told you this was going to happen. Oh, and then we move to new lows. Oh, it's a bottom. And then we get a rally back up near the 61.50 Fibonacci and to the 50-period moving average in the daily time frame, and then we move to new lows. Oh, this is the bottom, and then we rally, and then we move to new lows. I told you, I think we're going to form a bottom. We had that divergence in the 4-hour time frame, but that now is being negated. Likely, we're just going to get another counter trend at a divergence, but it's being canceled out in the 4-hour time frame with the RSI and the MACD moving to new lows. I'm going to get a bounce here. But the people that were so angry at me for calling a top and so angry at me for predicting the crash, which I got right, the top and the crash, now they are so angry. Their heads are exploding. The sell-off isn't over yet. Again, I think late December, more likely in January of 2026, I think Bitcoin will bottom at 50% or more, down 50% or more. And then I think you're going to get a massive rally for a right shoulder. Probably close my swing trade short positions in January and go long. Again, I'm holding a longer term position now that I'm going to just ignore the short-term price fluctuations. I'm also a swing trader. I separate my accounts, longer term and shorter term. Longer term positions, shorter term swing trade moves. That's just my strategy. And again, that's not a recommendation to buy or sell anything. Right here, again, we're falling. We're likely in crash wave 3, as I continue to say. I think you'll get a bounce surrounding Thanksgiving, and then I think you'll continue to sell off into December, probably into January, and then I think you'll get the Bitcoin bottom for a bigger rally. I talked about that at great length and detail. When we had that 52% sell-off, let me just go back and bring it up here. When we had that 52% sell-off in 2021, you ended up getting a bottom after 52%, and you ended up rallying back up to the 200 period, not seen here, and you rallied up 46%. You got a 50% retracement or so. You're going to see something similar to that, but then that was followed by the bottom falling out of Bitcoin, and we had formed a bear flag. I think you'll see something similar to that once we do bottom, but you've had these counter trend rallies all the way up, all these counter trend rallies all the way up, until we ended up dropping 52%. I think you're going to see something very, very similar to that. Dropping 78.5% in the bear market. The bear markets have been around 80% to 90% for Bitcoin. So unreasonable to believe that happens again? In the Moonboy cult it is. If you're a perma bull, a so-called expert, it is. And you got the Moonboys out there. Oh, it's a bear trap. Are you kidding me? This was the bull trap up here. This was the bull trap. Well, it's a breakout. slamming into major resistance. Now, again, I think you're going to see some type of rebound. Now, maybe it's with this bottoming tail. Again, I told you I thought we'd see a bottom this week. If you look at the awesome oscillator, you got these red bars. They're moving to new lows. So at some point, you're going to get a rebound back up and get green bars. That could be with this lower here. I am getting some bottoming signals. Others don't have it yet. I did get some false signals earlier in the week with these bottoming tails earlier in the week. So again, keep that in mind. But at some point, I think you're going to see green bars. And if you get it here, if you start to get it surrounding Thanksgiving, if this low can hold and be confirmed, we got a bottoming tail, a hammer candlestick, but it's not confirmed. You got to close above that level and get confirmation. You'll see other signals begin to turn back to bullish. The trending signals remain bearish. You can see right here with momentum, it's bearish. Okay, and is what's likely going to happen is you're probably going to, if you do rally, you're probably going to get some kind of divergence developing here on the awesome oscillator, on the RSI. And I think that you'll get a bounce. I think that will take us down to 74,000. And then 74,000 is over here. And then I think you're going to break 74,000. I think you're going to end up dropping 50+%. A 50% drop from 126,000 to 63,000. Do what we did the last bear market, 52% drop, that's 60,000. And then I think you'll see some type of recovery, a big rally recovery for a counter trend, a bigger counter trend than the counter trends that we've seen so far. So I'll be watching the awesome oscillator. The RSI is at extremes right now. And here you can see the RSI. It's very, very oversold. So you're likely going to see some bounce here. And if you do, again, it's going to deceive people into believing, oh, the bottom's in. The bottom's not in. Okay, we're going lower. I think you'll get a bounce and go much lower, and then I think you're going to get in January, maybe late December, but probably in January, you're going to get a massive rally. That's going to be the rally after we get this bigger drop that's going to convince everybody, oh, the bottom is here, it's over. All the people telling us that the sell-off's never going to happen, and all the people that told us that Bitcoin didn't top, the people that got it wrong, those people. I want to do the opposite of what those people say because, again, they're a bunch of perma bulls. And they often will get very, very bearish at tops or very, very bearish at bottoms and very, very bullish at tops. They are going to get very, very depressed after this next rally fails. But the Fed is likely going to do an emergency meeting by January. I've been predicting that for a very long time. And I think they'll start jumbo cuts. I think that we'll have Bitcoin crash. I think the stock market's following. Stock market's doing exactly what Bitcoin did, setting up the head and shoulders pattern as we had here. Nvidia's doing the same thing, NASDAQ, S&P. And I think they're going to all follow Bitcoin. And it's what's going to happen is the Fed, when we get to January and have the crash, Bitcoin's leading the charge. Market's going to play catch up. The Fed will panic and they'll start jumbo cuts. And then the herd, the moon boys, this is so bullish. It's over. Here we go. Please next. And all the rest of their nonsense. And again, it's likely going to be a counter trend rally. I've been predicting all of this stuff for a while since we started the September cuts. And again, oh, that was so bullish and Bitcoin sold off. And then the October cut, oh, that's so bullish, and Bitcoin sold off. Eventually, you're going to get the jumbo cuts, and we'll get a big, big rally. And again, the conventional wisdom is, oh, we're not going to get this cut in December. The Fed's canceling cuts. We're going to get a quarter-point cut in December. Fed does not cut in December. They are complete fools. Should be slashing rates right now, and they're going to overcompensate for that come January. Because a recession is about to start. Now, again, the herd believes that the cuts are bullish. They're bearish. They're going to be associated with the bear market for the stock market. They're going to be associated with the coming recession that Bitcoin has already started pricing in, that the stock market has started pricing in. And again, I believe the stock market topped on October 29th, the day of the Fed meeting. I think I got my sell-off wrong on that one. It was not here. But again, we sold off with that Fed meeting in October with Bitcoin. But RSI is suggesting we're going to get some kind of bounce and then we'll probably see a divergence. But again, it's the dip that keeps on dipping. I keep saying that. Again, we keep getting these dips and the moon boys keep calling these bottoms. And I keep telling you we're going down 40 or 50%. Why do I believe that? Because that's what Bitcoin's done in the past. Yet I'm being unreasonable for believing something so stupid as that. But yet the Moon Boys and the herd, they're not stupid for believing we had a breakout at major resistance in the weekly time frame and not believing Bitcoin was going to sell off at major resistance. Absolutely incredible. So I'll be watching to see if Bitcoin gets a recovery here with this low, or maybe if that doesn't hold shortly thereafter. But like I said, I think you'll get a bottom this week. As quickly, because I want to show you the weekly charts, and again, will likely confirm a bear market by Sunday, but I am getting some short-term bottoming signals here. Again, to be clear, that doesn't mean the sell-off's over. That doesn't mean Bitcoin's going to go make new highs. It means if this does play out, that we're going to get some kind of bounce, like we've had these other bounces, bounce, a bounce, a bounce, a bounce. That's what this means. I don't even think it means that we get a bigger bounce, because the opportunity for the bigger bounce was at higher levels if we had that leading diagonal scenario. It's likely we're not going to get the bigger bounce until we collapse 50% or more down to the January low. And I've talked about both of those scenarios at great length of detail. But you got some signals here, but we need more signals. And remember, my signals, which are correct, are still bearish in the daily time frame. My signals are still bearish in the weekly time frame. Keep that in mind. I'm getting some signals that we can get a bounce. And again, it will lull people into a false sense of security that, oh, the bottom's in and the bottom's not in. We're going to go down to 74,000 and maybe take it out. My guess is we will. We've only dropped 36%. You're likely going to drop 40 to 50%, probably more than 50% before all is said and done. Because that's what Bitcoin usually does when it kicks off a bear market. Great signals at the top, just ahead of the top there. Last bullish signals we got, we're getting one right now. The last bullish signals we got just gave us a counter trend. This is probably going to be very similar to that. Again, drew this back up at the top here, just after the top, broke the trend line from April. We back tested it, and again, now we got rejection at the 50, and now we're seeing the bottom fall to Bitcoin again. 74,000 is 41% drop. If we come down, dropping 50%, you're going to 63,000 or maybe more to 60,000. Then I think you're going to get some kind of massive rally back up. Now, when we did this back in 2022, you got a 50% drop, a 52% drop, and you rallied back up 46%. So could we see something like that? Assuming Bitcoin drops 50%, as it's done in the past, may drop more. But if we drop down to the let's say the mid 63,000 area, okay, and we end up a 46% rally as we did before. Well, you're looking at going back to 93, maybe 94,000, depending on where we come out, around 63,000. If we go lower, maybe less. Now, again, the rally could be bigger. I'm just saying that is what it's done in the past. We may see something bigger. We'll see. We go up to 100,000 or up to the highs over here and test them. That was the 107,000 area or so. If I could draw that straight there, 107,000, 108,000, something like that, if we get something bigger. But again, I think you're going to get this bottom, and then I think you're going to get this massive rally back up. If we go lower, it might be a lopsided pattern where the left shoulder is higher than the right shoulder. That's what we had back in 2021 and 2022. We dropped 52%, and you got this kind of goofy slanted neckline. We took out the horizontal support over here. In 2021, you took it out completely, and you went lower, but then you rebounded back up. So again, I think you have this head and shoulders that's kind of got a slanted neckline with a lower right shoulder, and then the bottom fell out of Bitcoin, and that ended up setting up the bear flag on Bitcoin into the 200 period moving average, getting a 50% retracement. So I think you're going to see something very similar to this. How is that so unreasonable? If you're perma bull that thinks that Bitcoin only goes up, then I guess it is unreasonable. If you're in the moon boy cult that you don't believe in science, you don't believe Bitcoin goes down, you only believe it goes up, that is unreasonable.